All right, you guys, welcome back to the channel. This is actually our second upload on Monday. It's something we don't ordinarily do, but I think considering these circumstances, we will make an exception. Now, I actually had recorded this video to upload yesterday, but I had forgotten to turn my microphone on. So here we are, re-recording, and we are going to talk about Iran. I mostly want to focus on the arguments that are coming from each side, because there's a lot of arguments coming from each side, and there's a lot of conflicting statements. There's just a lot of noise going on, and I want to try and sort through some of it as best as I can, and maybe help you guys sort through some of it, and maybe hopefully bring some peace to some people, because I know that this is it's very uncertain. These times are very uncertain. So let's just dive in and talk about it. So the quickest synopsis that I could possibly give is that we bombed some nuke sites, 3 precisely, in Iran, and people are melting down over the possibility of World War III. And the reality is of course it's a possibility. Iran could strike back in some retaliatory fashion. Now, I'm kind of glad that the video didn't work out yesterday, because since recording that video, Iran has actually responded, and they launched some missiles at a base in Qatar, I'm pretty sure, but they had given the US a heads up, which doesn't make any sense. Who knows what the reality of that situation is, but it seems that they have responded, and it seems that our government seems pretty certain that that's going to be the end of it. We don't know, though, but thankfully nothing has happened on our shores. I don't know. It's such a big question mark right now, and I think that's why so many people's nerves are so high, is because it is a question mark, and we generally as people don't like that. Before we get too far into this, I want to just take a moment and remind you guys that I'm a 25-year-old lady filming a podcast in a bedroom. So if you want real, deep, serious analysis, this isn't the place to get it. Okay, this is my opinion. This is based on things that I'm observing on the ground, things that I'm seeing online, conversations that I've heard, statements that have been made. By no means is this a professional, serious analysis, but it is nonetheless my stance, my opinion. First things first, the main thing that is, for lack of a better term, bringing me comfort right now is just reminding myself that every single president for the last 2 decades, if not more, has dropped bombs on a Middle Eastern country. Is what it is. Is that ideal? No. Is it risky? Always. But it isn't unfounded. And Iran is a little bit larger than previous countries, but it's still just not an unfounded, unoriginal, new idea, which brings us to the constitutionality of this action, because that's a big topic at hand. Is what Trump did is unconstitutional. You're hearing people like Thomas Massie make this claim, and don't get me wrong, I am a big Thomas Massie fan. I quite like him. I think that Trump's attacks on him are completely unfounded and ridiculous, but that is very Trump of him, and they'll probably kiss and make up in a week. Now, that said, though, I don't actually think that anything that Trump has done is unconstitutional, because there's quite a large precedent for it. So there are a couple different things here. Obviously, to declare war, you need congressional approval, but a president can act in this country's best interest with just notifying the Congress. And that is a precedent that goes all the way back to Thomas Jefferson. You have Harry Truman, Ronald Reagan, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, Trump. All of these people have done exactly the same thing, where you issue a strike and you don't need the congressional approval. You just have to notify Congress that it happened, which Trump did. Now, I do just want to throw this little tiny tidbit in there. I'm not trying to downplay anything Trump did or the risks behind it, because risky it was. But, you know, it was successful. For what it was meant to be, it was highly successful. A very successful operation. And Obama did a strike at one point that led to the death of American citizens in a foreign nation. And I just, don't know that anyone called for his impeachment. Any Democrats called for his impeachment. And I just find that to be interesting. I do find the double standard to be quite interesting. I saw Harry Sisson being very vocal about Trump being impeached over this. But when Biden struck the Houthis without congressional approval, Harry Sisson was very loud and vocal of his approval of that action. So, it's just interesting that the things you see when you pay attention. essentially it is constitutional. The precedent has been there since the beginning of the country, basically. So take that how you will. Next, I've been seeing a lot of signs. Let me rephrase. I've been seeing a lot of pictures of this one sign that said, if Kamala Harris were president, we'd all be at brunch. The reality is you as a person probably would be at brunch because you wouldn't be protesting Trump. That's quite simple. However, the other side to that is we'd more than likely still be in the exact same situation that we are in. Almost every presidential candidate has run on Iran can't have nukes for ever. If you don't believe me, let's just take a listen.
Foreign country do you consider to be our greatest adversary?
I think there's an obvious one in mind, which is Iran. Iran has American blood on their hands, okay? This attack on Israel, 200 ballistic missiles. What we need to do to ensure that Iran never achieves the ability to be a nuclear power, that is one of my highest priorities.
So if you have proof that Iran is building a nuclear weapon, would you take military action?
I'm not going to talk about hypotheticals at this moment.
That's a yes, in case anyone was wondering. But we're not done.
Iran were to launch a nuclear attack on Israel, what would our response be? And I want the Iranians to know that if I'm the president, we will attack Iran. And I want them to understand that, because it does mean that they have to look very carefully at their society, because whatever stage of development they might be in their nuclear weapons program in the next 10 years, during which they might foolishly consider launching an attack on Israel, we would be able to totally obliterate them.
One more, just for good measure.
Israel is a true friend. It is our greatest ally in the region. And if Israel is attacked, America will stand with Israel. As long as I'm president of the United States, Iran will not get a nuclear weapon. I made that clear when I came into office. It's to get Iran to recognize it needs to give up its nuclear program and abide by the UN resolutions and we are going to continue to keep the pressure on to make sure that they do not get a nuclear weapon. That's in America's national interest, and that will be the case so long as I'm president.
So no, basically this would still be happening under Kamala Harris. That is pretty much assured. The only difference is that we would still have wide open borders and we wouldn't be having the necessary deportations that are happening. And we also wouldn't have RFK Jr. fighting Big Pharma and the chronic health crisis that is plaguing America. And these might seem like small wins right now because the Iran thing seems so much bigger, and that's fair, but they are wins nonetheless, and they are wins that we would not otherwise have. In my opinion, this is where it gets nitty gritty, because the cornerstone of this debate comes down to whether or not you believe that Iran had nuclear weapons or possessed the ability to obtain nuclear weapons, because the consensus is quite clear that they didn't have nuclear weapons. However, the conversation is more focused on the enrichment of uranium, which is used to then create nuclear weapons. Now, what the original deal is that they can enrich uranium for civilian use, and that would hover around 3%. However, they have reached up to 60%, and it is at 90% that you can start using it for nuclear use. And that is, everyone's talking about the big Tulsi Gabbard things where she says that they don't have nukes. She doesn't think that they can create nukes. And she has come out and said that's not what I was saying. I talked about the uranium enrichment and that the probability of them being able to then create nukes, because they are starting to talk about the creation of nukes on the street more and more frequently, when that was previously something that was fairly taboo, is becoming very common. So it does seem that that was a concern of hers, although a lot of people think that she's just doing a bait and switch, which, it could be. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know, because I don't. I think that if there's a chance that there weren't nukes, that there wasn't the possibility of nukes. And I understand why people have that concern, because it's the weapons of mass destruction argument from Iraq all over again. I mean, it's literally the exact same playbook, and I do feel quite inclined to lean towards that camp. That said, if there was a legitimate possibility of Iran obtaining nukes, what is the right thing to do? I don't know. You know, I think it's still risky to bomb these sites because Iran is not a rational actor and could retaliate in any way. But I guess the logic is you take out the nukes, so then what are they really going to retaliate with? So I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be any kind of professional or know-it-all, but just from what I'm observing, I can very much see how, if you believe one of these two things, how you then come to the logical conclusion that this was good or bad. I do want to make clear that I do feel a little bit more on the side of being skeptical, just because it just feels a little bit too close to the weapons of mass destruction argument. They are tossing around regime change a little bit too much for comfort at this point. I know Trump put out some kind of regime change statement. Instead of MAGA, he said MIGA. And I mean, joke, probably. Him just being Trump, probably. But, you know, maybe not right now. Maybe not when a lot of his base is scared and very disapproving of this action. Maybe is not the time to make jokes. It's one thing to make jokes when the left is being completely irrational and ridiculous, but it's a lot of his base. A lot of his base is very, very upset. I also think that there's a real conversation that could be had around the fact that while, yes, Iran most certainly hates America, I mean, that's pretty undeniable, there's a conversation that could be had around why, and perhaps it has something to do with the U.S. always meddling in Middle Eastern countries. Because hate like this doesn't just come out of nowhere. It doesn't just exist in a vacuum. I just don't know that I buy into the whole they hate us because we're free. I think it's probably closer to the fact that they hate us because we try to make them live the way that we live. And that's not to say that they live good. I think they live like barbarians. I think that stoning women in the street is generally bad. So this isn't to like condone anything or the way that they live at all. And because of that, I think that it's fair that people question if what's being reported is legit, if it's right. So now another key divide that is happening online, and it falls right in line with they believe they have nukes or they believe they don't, is Trump just started World War III or he just ended World War III. Now on this one, those who are saying he just started World War III are expecting massive retaliatory action from Iran. We will see. I don't know. Like I mentioned, there was that attack on Qatar, which I don't know if I mentioned this. There were no U.S. casualties whatsoever. The other side of the argument is the people who are saying that he just ended World War III because he took out the nukes from Iran, which takes off a huge threat off the table. And I guess it'll just come down to how Iran responds. And I definitely think I lean more towards he ended it. I don't know that I would phrase it as he ended it. I just think that he's not going to start World War III. Mostly because of what I said at the top of the video. I just look at the fact that we've been striking Middle Eastern countries for decades at this point. You know, nothing really ever comes of it. And I'm not saying that as a good thing. I'm just saying that as an American citizen, I obviously want the best outcome for America. I don't care about Iran. Let me make that clear. I don't care about Iran. I don't care about Israel. I don't care about the West Bank or Palestine. I don't care. I care about America. Okay. I want America to be safe, protected, and secure and prosperous. And so long as this doesn't come to us and we don't send American soldiers over there, hopefully this is the last action that America takes in this fight between Israel and Iran, because make no mistake, this is Israel's fight with Iran. And we can, dip our hands back out of this. I don't think our hands should have been in it in the first place, and just keep our country safe and keep our citizens safe. Before we close out, I just want to make one more point. I have made a couple of videos on this on Instagram and TikTok. Link in the bio if you want to follow. I make short form content over there if you are interested. But there's a fine line here. You can speak out against these strikes. You can be skeptical of the actual nuclear status of Iran. You can do all of these things and not protest in defense of Iran, right? There's one user on X, India Willoughby. She is a transgender woman. I swear I'm not trying to be a jerk. I genuinely get confused. Man turned into a woman who lives in Great Britain and tweeted out saying, "I never thought I'd say this, but hashtag Team Iran." And I just find that to be so ballsy, considering that you are a transgendered person living in the safety of the West. And you just said you're on the team of the regime who would stone you to death. And people in the LGBTQ community like to say that when you make points like that, it's called pinkwashing, I think. It's called some kind of stupid wash. They gave it some dumb name. And basically it means that, like, you don't get to downplay the atrocities of the US by pointing out the atrocities of another country. And yes, I do. Yes, I do, actually. Because it's like what we discussed in the episode on Thursday with Whoopi Goldberg saying that the black experience in America is the same as a woman's experience in Iran. And those are not the same. If you think I need to elaborate on that, you're the problem, not me, and I'm actually not going to do it because it is such a waste of my breath to try to explain. If you believe that the experience of a transgender person in the West or a black person in America is equivalent to that of a woman or a transgender person in Iran, there's no getting through to you. Your retardation runs so deep, it's seeping out of your pores, babe. I can smell the retard, actually. So that's just where we're going to leave that. And honestly, at the end of the day, like I kind of made my point throughout this whole video, this issue is incredibly complex. There's people on both sides who are 100% sure that they are correct. The people who think that there were nukes or the possibility for nukes are 100% sure that there were nukes. And the people who are 100% sure that there weren't are 100% sure that they weren't. I can't say that I'm 100% sure either way. I lean more towards being skeptical, right? But I can't say that I'm 100%. And it's because I don't know. And I think anyone who's claiming to be 100% sure, you know, I don't know. I would say be wary because you can't be 100% sure. You literally can't. At this point, all we can do is theorize and hope and pray. And I would put heavy emphasis on those last two because what else are you going to do, folks? I don't know. But thank you for watching this special edition of the YouTube channel video. I'll get better at this someday, maybe. But if you've made it all the way to the end, you seem pretty committed. You might as well commit to the subscription. I recommend it. I think the content is pretty good, pretty worth it. Let me know down below. Are you team nukes or no nukes? That was a very Gen Z joke of me to make, and I think I am sorry for it, actually. But I'll talk to you guys on Thursday. Bye!